UFC 280 is still a few days away, but the pay-per-view buys are rolling in en masse due to a must-see event between former champion Charles Oliveira and streaking 155-pound contender Islam Makhachev. Also, the UFC president Dana White is totally fine with Alexander Volkanovski taking the winner of Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev, and Ilir Latifi is facing disciplinary action for an admission that he made inside the cage after his fight at UFC Fight Night 211. Then, UFC 280 picks and predictions. Here's the latest MMA news with your favorite MMA Quick Takes. UFC 280 pay-per-view buys are trending off the charts according to Dana White. He says, "We are crushing this event." Dana White told Barstool Sports, quote, "This thing is trending off the charts already." Dana White has always often said that pay-per-views are doing well when actually when you look at the stats later on, they weren't as well as he made them out to be. Dana White is a professional. He's a president of an entire sports organization. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's saying. The pay-per-view buys might be doing well. Who knows? But at this point, it's hard to tell. I would like to think that Oliveira versus Makhachev is a pretty big hit, especially with that Russian demographic coming in and Charles Oliveira bringing that Brazilian demographic as well. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Do you think that UFC 280 is going to hit it off as well as Dana White says it's going to? Let's not forget that UFC 280 is a pretty stacked card. I honestly don't think people are simply going to be buying it for Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. Yes, they are a huge draw, but you also have Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley, TJ Dillashaw versus Aljamain Sterling. There's going to be quite a few fighters on this card that people are going to want to see. I know myself, I'm going to want to see a lot of the other fights on the card as well, which is one of the reasons we are buying it. So let me know what you guys think. Also in the news, Dana White says that it makes sense, quote unquote, for Alexander Volkanovski to take the winner of Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira. I'm not upset by that. Alexander Volkanovski is in his prime position to challenge for the UFC lightweight championship. Beneil Dariush versus Gamrot happening on the same pay-per-view event, which a lot of people are probably going to be pushing for. Volkanovski is tapped to serve as a backup fighter for Oliveira versus Makhachev anyways. That fight makes sense. And let's be honest, a lot of people aren't going to get excited about a Beneil Dariush fight. People are looking forward to the champ, Alexander Volkanovski, getting ready to be a two-division champion. Volkanovski says that he's trained hard and he's worked hard to put himself here, and I believe it. Volkanovski knows exactly what he's doing. He became the champ once before, and he can become the champ again in a completely different division. And personally, that's something that I would like to see, and I know a lot of fans would like to see. We've had this conversation many times on the show, and I honestly think Volkanovski is the best fit. If you disagree, let me know in the comment section why. I would love to hear your opinion on why you don't think Volkanovski is fit for this, and if you really believe that, then who do you think should take that position as the contender for the winner of UFC 280? Lastly, the Nevada State Athletic Commission has temporarily suspended Ilir Latifi after he admittedly fought with staph infection at his UFC Fight Night 211 in-cage interview. The commission held a meeting on Tuesday that Ilir Latifi was temporarily suspended for admitting to knowingly competing with a staph infection in his October 1st win versus Alexei Olenek. The suspension will end when a resolution on the disciplinary action has been reached. We don't know how long that's going to take. The reason for this suspension is not only that he admittingly did it, but he failed to inform the commission or the organization prior to the fight, and nobody found out about it until this in-cage interview. Honestly, I don't blame them. There's no reason that you should risk another fighter's health or safety because you wanted to fight selfishly and you didn't take the time to tell anybody that you might have had something that could be spread. The NAC has been in touch with Latifi, who did describe it as remorseful. I'm sure he feels bad about the situation. He really wanted to fight. He wanted to get in there. He thought that having the staph infection and by telling people, obviously that would have him removed, as we all know why. I'm not going to kill the guy. Was it the right move? Definitely not. If you have a different opinion, which I highly doubt anybody has a different opinion, but if you have a different opinion, let me know in the comment section below on this matter. Hopefully they can reach a verdict soon and Ilir Latifi can get back into the cage and he can start going and buy his work again, but at this point, it just doesn't seem like something that's happening. I'm going to give you my picks for the UFC 280 prelims. The first fight on the card, Lina Landsberg versus Carol Rosa. Landsberg is coming off of 2 losses, Sarah McMahon and Pani Kianzad, and Rosa coming off of a loss against Sarah McMahon as well. I went with Rosa by decision. I'm not much into women's MMA fights. I really don't have a reason other than she is the favorite and I don't care too much about that fight, so I made a pretty quick pick. Next on the preliminaries, Islam Makhachev versus Malcolm Gordon. Makhachev, I have winning by submission in the first round. He's coming off of multiple wins on his record, but only 2 UFC fights, Charles Johnson and Cody Durden. Malcolm Gordon also coming off of 2 UFC fights against Dennis Bondar by KO, TKO, and Francis Figueiredo by unanimous decision. Because Gordon can be finished, I went over with Makhachev, who has shown an undefeated record so far in his professional career, so I've got Makhachev submission round 1. Moving on to the next fight on the card, Armen Petrosyan versus AJ Dobson. Petrosyan coming off of a loss to Chao Barallo 2 months ago. Dobson coming off a loss to Jacob Malcone 7 months ago. Now, of course, I went with Petrosyan by decision. I think Petrosyan is just the stronger guy. He's the moderate favorite at -220. Listen, they're both around the same age. They're both kind of in their prime right now. I just feel that Petrosyan has a little bit more of an opportunity with all of his knockout wins. We see a lot of submission wins for Dobson, but we've never seen Petrosyan get submitted. He has been knocked out once before, but I don't think we've ever seen Dobson knock anybody out in any of his wins. Oh, actually, I take that back. Kalen Hill he did, but that was not in the UFC. So if we're just going based off of UFC fights, I really think that it's going to go in favor of Petrosyan for this fight. Up next on the preliminaries, Abubakar Nurmagomedov versus Gadzhia Margadzhiev. However you pronounce that name. Let's see, Nurmagomedov coming off of a win to Jared Gooden by unanimous decision, and then that was a year and a half ago. Before that, he came off of a loss to David Zawada by submission. Gadzhi coming off a loss of his own, but by decision, and before that, he came in on the Contender Series against Jensi Silva. I went with Gadzhi Margadzhiev by decision. I think this is going to go all 3 rounds. I don't see a finish. Nurmagomedov lost by a finish, and Gadzhi lost by a decision. Zubaira Tukhugov versus Lucas Almeida is also on the preliminaries. Tukhugov coming off of a unanimous decision win over Ricardo Ramos 11 months ago, and then 2 years ago he took a loss to Hakeem Dawodu, and that was by a split decision. Lucas Almeida coming off of a left hook win to Mike Trizano, and before that he was not fighting in the UFC, so this is only going to be his second fight in. The slight underdog is for Lucas Almeida, putting Zubaira Tukhugov at a -155 slight favorite. Tukhugov, I have by decision win. I see this one also going 3 rounds. You've got Russia versus Brazil, a lot like what we're going to see in our main event, but unlike our main event, I'm going to go in favor of Russia for this one. Also in the preliminaries, we have one of my favorite fights, Volkanovski versus Nikita Krylov. I cannot wait to see this fight happen. I honestly don't know why it's in the preliminaries. I know a lot of people sleep on Ozdemir, and I have to be honest, I think I'm going to sleep on Ozdemir in this fight as well. I went with Krylov, and I think he's going to knock out Ozdemir. I think we all know why. Ozdemir's been knocked out before, and it was a pretty brutal one by Yuri Prochazka. I know Yuri is kind of a reckless, loose cannon in the cage, but you cannot deny that that knockout was pretty intense. Ozdemir's also lost by unanimous decision to Ankalaev, and then after that, he won against Paul Craig. That was his most recent decision 2 months ago. Ozdemir is the slight underdog at +145. I'm not too surprised about that. Nikita Krylov is a pretty heavy opponent for him. Krylov coming off of a win by knockout over Alexander Gustafsson. The thing that I'm a little concerned about, if you are into MMA math, is Nikita Krylov has lost to Paul Craig by submission, and Ozdemir did beat Paul Craig in his last fight. So if you're doing MMA math, if you're kind of looking at that a little bit, I totally understand why you might want to pick Ozdemir in this fight, but he's still the underdog, which means a lot of people are not putting that into play. Do I think Ozdemir has some semblance of a chance here? Probably, but do I think it's enough of a chance? No, not very much. I'd love to know what you guys think about this fight. This is one of the ones that I'm most excited about. I hope that during fight night I get to call this fight because, I don't know, there's just something about it. There's something a little juicy about it. I've always liked watching Krylov fight. I've always liked watching Ozdemir fight. I think it's going to be something a little more entertaining than what we're expecting here. After that, we've got Muradov versus Barallo. Muradov coming off a loss to Gerald Mearshart, and that was by submission. Barallo coming off of a lot of wins over here, fighting out of Brazil. His last fight was against Petrosyan. He won by unanimous decision. And before that, he won against Margadzhiev, the guy that's name I love to pronounce, by decision also. Moderate favorite goes in favor of Barallo, and that puts Muradov at the slight underdog at +180, fighting out of Uzbekistan. Muradov is 32 years old, 29 for Barallo. Barallo's got a little bit of a younger advantage with just 3 years. That said, at 32 years old, that could still put Muradov in his prime, and Muradov does have 3 extra years of experience. This was a little bit of a harder pick for me. I saw that a lot of people actually were going in favor of Barallo for this fight, and I can't say I really blame them. I picked Barallo as well. Barallo doesn't really have many submissions on his record, but we have seen Muradov get submitted in his last fight. He does have that little bit of an open weakness there, and I don't think Borralho's ground game is too bad. So I think I went on a little bit of a whim, and I chose Borralho by submission. I know it's a little unlikely, and I know it's a little out there as far as picks are concerned. Most people probably would have wanted decision or KO TKO, but I'm going to go submission on this one. I just have a little bit of a hunch, and I'm hoping it goes that way. For the last fight of the prelims, we have Belal Muhammad versus Sean Brady. Belal Muhammad coming off of a win against Vicente Luque by unanimous decision. He is the plus 115. This is a near even fight. A minus 140 puts Sean Brady as the slight favorite. Sean Brady also coming off a win over Michael Chiesa by unanimous decision. His record sits at 15-5-0, and Muhammad at 21-3-0. He's got a few more fights he's got a few more professional fights under his record. Brady has a little bit of an age advantage as far as prime is concerned, but Muhammad has that age experience at 34 years old. I went with Sean Brady by decision. I like Belal Muhammad a lot. I do think he's a little bit boring, but that has really nothing to do with his fight performance. I just think Sean Brady's going to have a little more power and a little more oomph that he's going to be able to bring to this fight. I went decision because I don't think either of them have the ability to finish each other. We've seen Sean Brady submit a lot of opponents in the past, but Belal Muhammad does have that ability to kind of go the distance with all of his opponents, especially the ones as of late. So I think Belal Muhammad's going to really weasel around what Sean Brady has to offer, and they're going to go the distance on this fight. So Sean Brady by decision. That's it for the preliminary UFC 280 picks. I will be doing my UFC 280 main card picks on the next MMA Quick Takes, so make sure you like, hit subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell because you don't want to miss the latest MMA news on your favorite MMA Quick Takes.